Hi everyone, it's Carol Williams with Williams Immigration, and today I wanted to talk about the process of applying for U.S. citizenship. What are the requirements, what happens during the application process, and why you may want to consider applying for U.S. citizenship. So the requirements are fairly basic. As with anything with immigration, there are always some exemptions, some things that don't necessarily apply, but today I'm just going to talk about sort of the really basic requirements and the application process. If your process winds up being a little bit more complicated or you've got some extra questions, of course, feel free to give my office a call at 954-903-1337. So the basic requirements for United States citizenship are that you must be at least 18 years old or older, so at least 18. You must be a lawful permanent resident, or some people call that having a green card, using the terms interchangeably. You must be a lawful permanent resident for at least 5 years, and you must be able to show that you have been in the U.S. on U.S. soil for at least half of those 5 years. So there's a little bit of math involved, but it's not too difficult. Now, if you are a lawful permanent resident, 18 years of age, and you are married to a United States citizen, instead of 5 years, you only need to show that you have been a lawful permanent resident for 3 years. And then your physical presence requirement, the time that you need to show that you're physically in the U.S., is cut down to half of the 3 years. So that's a really big exception and a really big carve out that we have in the immigration rules. So those are the basic requirements. What happens when you actually file your application? So you file your application with the Immigration Service, and then you will be given what's called a biometrics notice. You should get that a couple weeks after filing. And the biometrics notice is really just a time when you go into your local office, your local biometrics office, and they take your fingerprints and your photograph. Those are used for background checks, and your picture is actually ultimately used in your citizenship certificate. After your biometrics are taken, then later you will then go into an interview at your local immigration office. The office will generally be pretty close to where you live. Certainly it won't be around the corner, but it will be pretty close. It should be roughly in your city. But again, if it's not in your city, it'll be fairly close. During that interview, you will be given an English language test, which will include testing on your ability to read English, write English, and speak English. So the speaking part of the exam is actually the entire interview itself. The officer just wants to make sure that you can fully converse in English. For the writing portion of the exam, you will be given several sentences in which you have to write down on paper. And for the reading portion, you will be given several sentences that you simply have to read to the officer. In addition to the English language test, there is also a civics test, or what we would commonly refer to as U.S. history. So on the immigration website right now, for anyone to go see, are 100 questions all about U.S. civics and U.S. history. Of those 100 questions, the officer will choose 10 questions. They will ask you those 10 questions. You are responsible for getting at least 6 of those questions correct. So the civics test and the English test typically don't take a whole lot of time during the interview. And again, for the civics test, you can absolutely, and I absolutely recommend that people download those 100 questions from the immigration website and study those questions before they go in for their interview. Assuming that your interview is positive and that you pass the test, then you are approved to then move forward and take the last, participate in the last part of the process for U.S. citizenship, which is to then you come back to the office and you take your U.S. Citizenship Oath. You are not a U.S. citizen until you come back and you take that oath. That is very important to understand. So once you take the oath, you can then apply for a U.S. passport, and then that opens you up to various benefits of being a U.S. citizen. So I also wanted to talk to you about some of the reasons that my clients have in the past, why they have applied for U.S. citizenship and why they found it so incredibly beneficial for them. Now that they are U.S. citizens, they are able to have their voice heard. They're able to vote in state and local and federal elections. They're able to cast their vote for their next congressional representative, and which is so important for so many people, they were able to cast their vote for the next president of the United States. They were able to take part in that process. You cannot vote in federal elections if you are a lawful permanent resident, but you can vote in federal elections if you are a United States citizen. So that was very important for some of my clients in the past. You can also travel outside of the United States when you are a United States citizen without worrying about how much time you have spent outside of the United States. When you're a lawful permanent resident, you really shouldn't be traveling outside of the United States for more than 6 months at one time. If you've done this and you've come back in, you know that you have had extra questioning at the airport. And frankly, you just don't want to be hassled anymore. So as a U.S. citizen, you're allowed to spend more than 6 months outside of the United States. And when you come back into the airport, there are no extra questions. There is no funny looks. There's no holding of your passport. There's no watching the officer kind of count the time frame. And there's no annotations put in your passport. So you're able to freely travel and cross borders in and out of the United States as much as you would like without having to keep track of that time. When you are a United States citizen, the other really great benefit is that you are shielded from deportation. Lawful permanent residents can be deported from the United States. They can absolutely be put into deportation proceedings. When you are a United States citizen, you are not able to be deported. Now, there is one very important exemption to that, and that is if you committed fraud in any of your underlying applications, including your green card application and your citizenship application. But assuming that everything that you said in your prior applications was 100% accurate, you told the truth, once you become a United States citizen, you're not deportable. So, in the unfortunate event that you have a criminal issue happen, worrying about being deported is not something that will even come into play if you are a U.S. citizen. Of course, if you are a lawful permanent resident and you have some criminal issues, then yes, you may be deported as a part of that process. Not all the time, but certainly it is a worry. So to take that worry off the table, certainly being a U.S. citizen is a great thing for that as well. Another benefit of being a U.S. citizen is that you get to sponsor your family members, and your family members, their applications are processed quicker because the U.S. government has put a priority on family members of U.S. citizens versus family members of lawful permanent residents. So your family members benefit when you become a U.S. citizen. And another benefit of becoming a U.S. citizen is that as a U.S. citizen, you are eligible for much more financial aid for college and university studies. So your educational path opens up quite a bit in that you are eligible for more scholarship and grant opportunities. And finally, in the unfortunate circumstances or instance that you have financial troubles, whether it be from, a job loss, or maybe you have had a medical issue and you've got overwhelming medical bills, as a U.S. citizen, you can seek and receive benefits and help from the federal government without having to worry about how that will impact your immigration status. Because the short answer is it won't. Once you become a U.S. citizen, you are eligible to apply for and receive government benefits. So that is also a great benefit of being a U.S. citizen and having that protection and that help from the U.S. government. So again, to qualify for U.S. citizenship, you must be at least 18 years old. You must have been a lawful permanent resident for 5 years and been physically present in the U.S. for those 5 years. Those 5 years are cut down to 3 years if you are married to a U.S. citizen. And then your physical presence in the United States is also only half of that 3-year time frame. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, Carol Williams, at Williams Immigration, and I can be reached at 954-903-1337. If you have found this video helpful, please like it. Please share it with friends and family that you think may also find it helpful. And please subscribe and like my various social media channels. I can be found on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and also YouTube. And again, I am Carol Williams with Williams Immigration, and I hope you found this helpful.